to go back to this idea that touch equals sex, it's like if you don't have touch available for comfort when somebody's grieving, or relief when they're stressed out, or relaxation, or what have you, then there's a lot that doesn't get that people don't have the ability or capability to get. And like your example that you said earlier about couples who are like, oh, not gonna, my husband's like hugging me or touching me, that must mean he wants sex, or partner, I'm sorry, because sometimes it goes the other way around. I mean, with my hands-on business, we definitely saw men who were like, yeah, I want more touch and my wife's not into it. But that's just not available for people when we sexualize all of the touch.
Welcome back. We are on today with my guest Epiphany Jordan on the 12 for This Shit podcast. I'm your host, Angie. You can come and find me at angies.com. That's angie-s.com, or on my Linktree link, which is linktree/12 for This Shit. Both links are in the show notes, just like every week. Listen, that's the place you can go if you want to be part of my community, if you want me to show you how to create your own podcast and get involved with what I do. I'd love to see you there. So if you like the show, please give it a 5-star rating and review, and be sure to tell your friends. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you are listening to right now. The more you do that, the more it helps new listeners discover this show. In today's episode with Epiphany, author of the book Somebody Hold Me, we talk about touch in its platonic form. From anything from how it's perceived in different cultures and across times, boundaries, how to ask and refuse platonic touch, and by that I'm talking, often like a hug, and alternative solution for single people on how to replace a hug when you're by yourself. So, without further ado, let's begin. Welcome, Epiphany.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you so much for joining me today. I am really excited and intrigued about this topic that we're going to go on. So I'm really happy that I got you on board, because today we're going to talk about the healing properties of platonic human touch. You wrote a book on it, you created a whole venture around it, and there's more to come as well, a different path that you're creating around it. And so, there are certain things, I was looking online before, just before we're connecting. Obviously looked into what you did, but I thought, let me just see what Google says about human touch. And I just picked up the first thing just to see what comes up at number one. And I saw this bit that said, and I'm quoting this from a website, I probably should have put down the website, so I'm so sorry to the website, but this is what it said, there are studies showing that touch signals safety and trust. It soothes. Basic warm touch calms cardiovascular stress. It activates the body's vagus nerve, which is intimately involved with a compassionate response, and a simple touch can trigger a release of oxytocin, aka the love hormone. So my question, some of the things that we're going to talk about today is that why are we so starved from touch? Like, why is touch so sexualized, or need to be within a romantic involved partnership, or getting a hug from a family member, if your family even gives that hugs, right? Not all families do. So all of this and perhaps more is what I love to talk with you, Epiphany Jordan, today. So before we dive in, please introduce yourself, where you live and what you do.
Hi again. Thank you, Angie. My name is Epiphany Jordan. I live right now in Austin, Texas, and I am on a mission to redesign human touch. I would like to see us think about touch as something that is integral to health and wellness, as opposed to our current paradigm, which equates sex with touch, which means that you can only get your touch in romantic relationships. And this paradigm is leaving most of us out. It's definitely leaving single people out, but it's also leaving people who are in partnered romantic relationships out as well. And so I've been working on this and studying it for about 8 years now, and it's a pretty fascinating topic that uh, touches, no pun intended, most areas of our lives. It's very, very integrated and uh, I don't know what the word I want is, but it's just it encompasses so much. It encompasses so much, so many different areas of our lives.
Yeah, it does, and it's really because we're not even the only ones that crave touch. You know, like horses, dogs, cats. They all, sentient beings do crave touch. And you know what you mentioned about the even people in a romantic partnership, they are also sometimes touch is just pure platonic touch can be an issue. I mean, I know I did an episode with, I can't remember if it was with Courtney or Chelsea, but that women sometimes will forego a cuddle or a hug with their partner because they feel it always comes with the pressure or understanding that sex will automatically follow. And the fact that that pressure is on there puts you off being touched. You almost don't want it. It's like a allergic reaction. Whereas the paradox, right, is that if you get like let's say if you are in love with your partner and he hugs you or holds you, let's say if he's a man, right? He hugs you or holds you, or if it's a woman, and there is no pressure to sex, all of a sudden, I mean, to me, that's like the fastest route for my romantic partner to get laid, basically.
Totally.
Because I feel relaxed. My body's opening up and relaxing, and it's like, welcome.
Oh, absolutely. That's actually the first book that I wrote that I think we're going to talk about a little bit later is about nurturing human touch for single people. And then the next book I want to write is a book about nurturing human touch for couples.
Actually, so what is the name of your book? You haven't mentioned it.
Oh, I have not mentioned it. You're right. I forget. I've got, so many million directions I'm going off in. So the book is called Somebody Hold Me, The Single Person's Guide to Nurturing Human Touch.
I love that. I love that title, Somebody Hold Me. It says
so
much. It says so much.
Yeah, it tested really well with people. It really resonated because, as we've said, because we equate sex with touch, it's like we don't have touch for comfort or relief or relaxation or just caregiving in general, and I'm sure people can relate to being in a space where you're just feeling overwhelmed or traumatized, or you've had a bad experience or a loss of some sort, and where do you go to just get somebody who give you a long hug or a cuddle and just kind of be like, hey, it's gonna be all right. It makes such a difference.
Yeah, no, and we're gonna go into all of that. But the first question I have for you is, what got you? What is it that got you to do what you do, aka like talk about platonic touch and subsequently write a book on it? Like, was there any? Is there like sort of like a summary of a story of like why you're even doing this?
Yes, there is. So in 2008, I was studying sacred sexuality with a woman, Anara DeLuna, and the Temple of the Red Lotus. And she lived in Atlanta, Georgia, and she was part of the pagan community. And so she would go to different pagan festivals and do presentations and workshops and events that were around sexuality. And one of the events that she had us do that we were working with her on one night was called a Karuna session. And it was an experience of non-sexual touch. And the experience was really profound, being a provider of this for participants, and it really stuck with me. And I kept thinking about it and thinking about it. And a few years later, I asked a friend to start playing around with the format with me, and people just really loved it. And so we ended up turning into a business, and we ended up closing down last year because of the pandemic. And then I think, when was it, 2017, I ended a relationship that I was in for 5 years, and I knew from the work that I was doing and the research I had been doing that, if I didn't end up dating somebody else, if I didn't get into another romantic relationship, then that was pretty much it. I was, I was SOL. And also, one of the other reasons for writing the book was that um, our service was amazing, but it was also priced as a luxury service, and I knew that the people who needed it the most could afford it the least, and I wanted to give people a low cost option for it.
Hence the book.
The book,
Right, right.
yes.
And can I just ask you, because you said you mentioned a word and I don't know it. You said like you knew that after in 2017, after breaking up with your partner of 5 years, you knew that if you didn't get into a relationship, romantic relationship with someone else, you'd be SOL. What does that mean?
Shit out of luck.
Sh- as a shadow of like of what? Of human touch
Of not,
or?
yeah, exactly. If I knew that if I wasn't having sex with somebody, then I probably wasn't going to get any tender touch. You know.
Yeah, yeah. So can you tell me? Obviously, I think the thing with platonic touch is that obviously there is discernments around how it's perceived throughout different cultures in the world, right? So, like in
Absolutely.
Europe, a lot of us give like a kiss on the cheek, two up to
Uh-huh.
three as well,
Yeah.
Other places is handshake, other places just you wave. Obviously, a quick kiss on the cheek does not replace a touch, a hug, but it's just sort of to show like the differences, in different cultures. And I'm going to look, there's something else I'm going to say around that a bit later on, but even to do with like nudity and stuff, how there's a lot of hypocrisy in the Western world
Yeah.
around it. Well, actually, maybe I'll say it now. Actually, for example, especially in the US, the way I see it from across the pond and what sort of I can perceive is that, and maybe even in the UK, this is the case too, touch and being naked is seen as a sexual thing, whereas in
Yes.
other countries, touch and obviously, like I said, like cheek kisses are the norm. Being naked is no big deal. Whereas I feel like in some cultures in the West, like for example, the US, the fear of the naked body actually sexualizes even children. In a way that it's like, I know it sounds a bit weird, but it's like, you look at what they call them, beauty pageant for kids. I mean, they look like Barbie dolls, some of them, with the
Yeah.
makeup, the fake hair. And again, another thing, which and I know it's a totally different conversation, but I just wanted to put this as almost like a premise to our conversation, is that, for example, even like prostitution is so frowned upon, illegal in places, all that kind of stuff, even though it's the oldest job in the world. However, if you put a camera on it, all of a sudden it's very legal and okay.
Yeah.
But not for the woman. She's the one who's going to pay the price for being in that movie. However, the
Right.
man is, So there's so many layers. I don't know if that maybe some of those things kind of are part of why there's this big contradiction. We have this need for human touch, so maybe that's why we are putting a camera on it, or we are calling it a beauty pageant, and doing it in such a perverted way. With kids, I think it's I have a big problem with children beauty pageant. I think it's awful that they have to be adults at such a young age, but so now that I've said what I've said, but can you tell me why is platonic touch, in the cultures where it is actually rare, why is it so misunderstood and so taboo?
That's a big question, and it's a great question. I think, the thing that I think is helpful to realize is that, who, where, why, and how we've touched people, like you said, does vary from culture to culture, but it's also varied from time to time. One of the things that I love to talk about is that, if it was 100 years ago before the advent of electricity, in the winter, if you lived in a cold climate, you would have been sleeping in a bed with your entire family for
Oh
warmth,
yeah,
to
yeah.
keep from freezing to death, because fuel's expensive. Um, so this habit that we have of, kind of being more physically distanced from each other is a fairly recent iteration of human society and culture. It hasn't been that way for a long time. And I mean, when you think about it, when, the way that we raise our young, giving your infant a lot of really close physical contact and touch in their first couple of years of life sets them up emotionally and for neurologically. It's like your brain after you're born is still forming all these neurological pathways. And so one of the things that they found is that human touch will set you up for good relationships and emotional regulation and ability to trust and be discerning and all these different things. And then as we get older and older, we get further away from it. And I'm not sure when things really changed as far as relationships went. Obviously, well, I mean, in some cultures there still is arranged marriages. Like some of my father's family still have arranged marriages, but relationships and romantic relationships have really undergone a transformation over the past 50 years. People are getting married later, they're having fewer children. The advent of birth control has certainly been a game changer, and also the fact that women can earn their own money and have that sort of control. Where you don't have to be married anymore and you don't have to have children. Um, and it's just we've shifted so much in what we expect of our romantic relationships and what we think we should get out of them, and it's just become more and more difficult. And I know in the United States about 50% of Americans are single. There are people who will say that single Americans are having more sex than people who are in relationships. Maybe that's the case. I don't know if we're talking about quality of sex, I'm sure there's a huge difference. I mean, I know
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
sex in a relationship for me is always a lot better. I'd rather
right.
forego sex altogether than have a crappy one night stand. But,
Yes,
um,
yes, yeah.
I mean, again, to go back to this idea that touch equals sex, it's like if you don't have touch available for comfort when somebody's grieving, or relief when they're stressed out, or relaxation, or what have you, then there's a lot that doesn't get that people don't have the ability or capability to get. And like your example that you said earlier about couples who are like, oh, not gonna, my husband's like hugging me or touching me, that must mean he wants sex, or partner, I'm sorry, because sometimes it goes the other way around. I mean, with my hands-on business, we definitely saw men who were like, yeah, I want more touch and my wife's not into it. But that's just not available for people, when we sexualize all of the touch.
But that's interesting because the example you were saying, like obviously men as well crave touch. And I know I was using a very, I guess, cliche example, the man wanting sex, the woman just wants a snuggle, But actually, there's something really interesting about touch is that you may be able to, let's say you in a romantic relationship and it's not going well, or you in an instant of, you start building resentment or whatever, things are basically going really bad, and you may still be able to have sex with that person, maybe even kiss a little bit, but if they touch you, it may almost feel like it's burning you. There's something about touch, and actually kissing it also is difficult if you don't like someone or if you're really mad at someone, but there's something about touch that is very hard to fake.
Yeah.
There's an energy exchange that's going on, it's like this zone it's entering, that if you don't like that person, you almost want to punch them in the throat, that's anyone, I don't mean it's just a romantic partner, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's something that they've researched that's called affective touch. It's AFFECTIVE as opposed to effective. But in studies that they've done, they've found that people can convey an emotion with 1 second of touch. When you touch somebody, you can tell if they're touching you because they're like angry, or they're trying to comfort you, or they want to get your attention, or what have you. And we actually have cells in our skin that register affective touch. There's discriminatory touch, which is this hot or cold or rough or smooth or, heavy or light. We have those kinds of cells in our skin as well. But then we also have cells in our skin that register emotion.
That is so interesting. Sorry, I'm interrupting you there, but
yeah,
that's so interesting because when you said that, I thought this is why spanking and choking can be fine in a loving relationship. However, those things can also be used as like if you hit someone or strangle someone, it could be attempted murder, or it could be attempted to orgasm if you're in a loving relationship, because the intention is different, right?
Right.
The feeling behind it, and your body can tell. You can tell if someone's slapping you for fun, in play, or if they're slapping you because they're like, F you. It's a very different situation.
Oh, I know. And it's so funny. I've talked to so many women who are like, yeah, I was like having sex with this guy for the first time and he tried to choke me, and I was, and they were just like, what the fuck? And I'm just like, yeah, it's something that needs to be done with somebody that and trust. It's like, yeah, that's definitely not first date material.
No, and also that's what they don't teach in porn. If people get this sex education through porn, they're going to think that, that's what's going down. It's like, no. There's a lot of trust that has to be done. A lot of, it's not something that it just happens, within 5 seconds. I mean, it's that lack of awareness. It's I think people they've desensitized themselves to what touch means and what it is to be loving with someone, and they look
Absolutely.
at things. Yeah, they look at things that are quite dominant on in the media, and they think that dominance is aggression, and it's two very different things. You need to probably be extra gentle, really, to go there. You need to be extra loving, extra more conscious. To be someone who's very aware, not the run of the mill one night stand can do that. Not even the run of the mill person can.
Right.
Do that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I just finished reading this book by an Irish philosopher. His name's Richard Kearney, and he talks about the phrase he uses is excarnation, which means being out of our bodies. And he draws the parallel between, the fact that so much of sex and sexuality these days is visual. It's all about what a person looks like, and it's like we're watching sex, and I'm just like, that porn, I find it to be boring. I'm like, I want to know what a person smells like, what they feel like, what our bodies feel like when they're together, how they fit together, and what they feel like when they touch me, and that's way more interesting to me than what a person looks like.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, a six-pack does not turn me on. I mean, I appreciate it. I appreciate the hard work they've put into it. When I look in the magazines, I'm like, well done, right. Beautiful. Does not look comfortable to me.
Yeah, you're like, I don't want to put on all that time at the gym, right?
No, but also I like something. I was just like a bit more comfort. But I think, like you said, the visual side of it, it's become so visual. The big lips and people injecting stuff in their lips, and they're 18. They don't need it. They are, and the all stuff with their hair and to their body, and it's like, to me, it's like you said, it's more to do with the being present with that person. But for me, it's also what's the attitude, what's the energy, and what is it they're saying to me? What's the attitude? Even from the first time they take me out to dinner, the attitude, how they carry themselves. You know what I'm saying? There's so much more. That's what's going to really turn me on.
How they treat their server. Oh my God.
Yeah.
If you're rude to the busboy, we're done. If you treating people less than, if you don't talk to a homeless, don't say hello to a homeless person, or you walk by a homeless person and you start complaining about them, we're out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Are there any sort of like any? I know it's something that you mentioned in your book. Are there any sort of cultural myth that discourage nurturing human touch, or did we already cover that? Are there any other myth that maybe we're not even aware play a role into why we are not having more human touch on a platonic level?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of different factors. We did talk about how people are marrying later and having fewer children. We don't live in multi-generational households anymore. I mean, like my mother has been a widow for 13 years now, and she gets a lot of touch from her granddaughter. Her granddaughter's like always, climbing all over her and stuff. If she was living in an old folks' home, she wouldn't have that opportunity. People are much more dependent on their pets for their intimate relationships than they have
Oh
been.
yeah, yeah,
That's huge.
yeah.
Actually, I'm leaving my day job in about a month, and my boss sent me a picture yesterday night. She just got a new puppy, and I was just like, "Oh my God, this is a ploy to get me to stay at my job. I'm sure of it." I mean, I just like want to go over there and sit on her couch and snuggle with the puppy all day long. He's so cute. He is
Yeah,
so adorable.
yeah,
Let's see what else. We're very busy these days. We also have a lot of information being thrown at us. Like tons and tons of messages and news and advertising and social media, all these different things, YouTube, all these different things that are trying to get our attention.
Are you saying they're sort of like saturating our nervous system so that we forget to even have touch because we're constantly getting stimulus from the screen, basically?
We get overstimulated from it. It overstimulates our nervous system, and we don't really know how to calm ourselves down. But it also just keeps us really busy. I mean, what were we doing? What were you doing 30 years ago before you spent 7 hours a day online?
Oh, I
Goofing
know.
off
I miss
and
those
so
days,
forth.
actually. Yeah.
I know. Let's see what else. There's a lot. I don't know if we've always had as many mental health problems as people do now, but um, there's a lot of depression and addiction and anxiety and suicidal thoughts and all these different things that would keep you from maybe forming a romantic relationship. I don't know if I think it's a harder thing when you think about being in a relationship with somebody who has a lot of challenges from that perspective, but also from the perspective of the person who has the challenges. When you're depressed, you probably don't feel like going out and spending time with your friends.
Yeah, yeah.
People are a lot more isolated. What else? We've also another really big one, and this one's really hard, is we've really demonized men and men touching other men and just male
Yeah.
touch in general, and and equating that with sex, that if you touch another man, you're gay. I mean, there's lots and lots of examples.
Which is interesting because in India, it's pretty normal for. I mean, I've never been to India, but I think I've read in a book, and I think I had someone tell me about a colleague who came over from India about how it's really normal to just like hold the hand down the road, like between men in certain parts of India. Now, I may be
Yeah.
wrong, and I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone, but like that apparently that is totally normal. Where it's true, if you did this in London, where I live, it's like the guys would be like, "What the fuck? Why
Yeah,
are you touching me?" Right?
exactly.
So yeah, but it shows that if we're not conditioned to looking at it as being so wrong, it is completely feasible. It's because we're being conditioned now in society to think, well, touch is sexual, hence it has to mean something.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I think about a lot is there's so many things in our society and culture that are just kind of the path of least resistance, where you do them because it's the easiest thing, and then you go, oh, okay, I don't really like how we live, or how I treat various relationships or something, and so to think about, hey, I want to do this very differently. It has to be a very deliberate, conscious thought process. That's what I'm kind of thinking about around this idea of redesigning human touch. It's like, okay, we know that the way that we're treating human touch doesn't work for a lot of us. How can we do it differently? How can we make it differently and, create that sort of thing? And I think it's easier to do when you do that.
Yeah, and there's also the added factor of safety, right? Now, obviously, I'm not a man, so I don't know how it feels like for a man, but I think like for a woman, like I know I'm discerning around touch, like, and I say touch, like, platonic touch, like a hug, on two levels. One is there are people I just don't want near me. Even if I like them, I don't necessarily need their presence near my energetic body. I don't need them to be hugging me because I'm just not in that place with them. I don't need their energy touching mine. It's just something I just can't explain. I just don't need you near me. Like I don't need. And
well,
then,
you don't have to explain.
I don't explain it to them because it'll be insulting them as well. But like, I guess it's like that's the only way I can sort of explain it on here is what I mean. But and then the second factor would be safety.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Because I know that's something that you touch on in your book as well, which is like permission versus consent, which I think is very important because, like you said, we need to redefine human touch, and part of it is also permission versus consent. But yeah, definitely like safety. And I've been in like, yoga circles and stuff, and where, I arrive on the first day and everybody's hugging everybody, and the men, because they try to activate their masculine energy, they're like, they're like topless, so it's like they're showing their manly chest, and I'm like, I'm really not feeling old, and I used to be so because I wasn't letting people, and also just randomly touching me, I'm like, it just feels weird to me, even though I love touch, I love a hug, I love that, but like I'm discerning, right? And so I remember one time in yoga class, I was there was like a Q&A session with the teacher, and I went, I'm like, I can see everyone is touching each other, hugging, but like I'm not in that zone with everybody 100% of the time. And do you know what the response was? You have to open your heart chakra, which for those who haven't been in
bullshit.
yoga.
I'm sorry. No.
No, it's complete bullshit. What they mean by heart chakra, if anyone doesn't know who's listening, is basically is where your chest is, like where between your breasts, like where the sternum is. And they say like, to open it, you have some yoga poses where you can open it to be more loving and receive love. And the thing is, I'm just like, I still wasn't buying it. I'm like, the thing is also over time, there were certain people like I got to know better, and it's like if they hugged me, it was safe, and I actually liked the energy. I got to know them. I'm like, the energy is sound, and it's like there's a lot of misunderstanding and people trying to, I think, if I wasn't so strong-minded, I would have gone like, oh my God, my heart chakra. Oh shit, damn. So I mean, I would have gone down that road, right? But because I'm like, nah, I'm gonna say fuck off. Obviously with respect, namaste and all. But I'm just not. I'm not buying it. I know what I feel.
Yeah, no, and you bring up you bring up a really important point. It's like people, and you see this in a lot of different things. It's like people always assume that everybody feels the same way about touch that they do. I mean, I know people who are touch enthusiasts who it's like, they'll meet somebody for the first time and just grab them and give them a huge hug. And like, even before COVID, I was like, whoa, wait a second here.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a really important thing to realize that it's like not everybody has the same comfort level around touch as other people. And, that is a really, really important thing to know. It takes a second to ask somebody, would you like a hug? And, that can make a huge difference, because oftentimes I think people who are very touch sensitive have a lot of trauma around touch, and you go in there for the hug and it's going to get back, get into their muscle memory again that, hey, it's not safe to touch, whereas, if they want you to hug them, then it's a completely different experience. I mean, I will say, I hug a lot of people, obviously. And, when I give somebody a really long hug, when it's a hug that they've consented to, like a few seconds in, it's like I feel their body relaxing. And then like one of the things that I hear, like one of the most universal phrases is, "Oh my God, that feels so good."
Yeah. Yeah.
That because it does, it feels good, but it feels good i- when it's touch that you've asked for and that you want.
But it's actually, there's also a very scientific explanation behind it, which is actually physiological, which when you are, let's say if I was to hug you now and I have my arms around your back, after a while, like your nervous system that runs through your spine feels it and it literally relaxes it. It literally
Absolutely.
opens it, and that's why it feels so good, because then it will release all these feel good chemicals in your body. And
Hmm.
it's interesting because I know you mentioned about, people that can be like touch sensitive due to trauma. I think also some of us are, and I think that's more where I stand in that, in terms of like, I'm not feeling, I don't need to be touching everybody, even if it's kumbaya, and I'm into kumbaya. Absolutely, I love it. But I'm like, even if I'm not, so for me, it's because I think some of us absorb energy. I can feel people's energy. I think people who are a bit more on the empath side or
Yeah.
highly sensitive,
Yeah.
I can literally feel if there's something going on, and I don't need to be absorbing any more than I already am. It's kind
No
of, that's why
kidding. No
I'm
kidding.
standing as well sometimes, which
Yeah.
is, yeah.
Makes perfect sense. I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. I tend to read people's energy a lot too. And yeah, and sometimes, but it doesn't even matter. That the important thing is, I think that, people recognize that everybody has different boundaries. I mean, boundaries are so confusing to people.
Yeah.
And, when somebody says no, it can mean not right now, not that thing, not with you. And I read something the other day that I just thought was so brilliant. It said, when somebody sets a boundary with you, they're not trying to end the relationship, they're trying to continue it.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I know. I loved that so much when I heard it.
Oh, do you know, that is
Another
so gonna be a slogan. I maybe
another
quote. Is this your quote? If I was to
It's
quote it,
not. I can't. That one is not me. I can give you another good one from my friend Francesca
yeah.
Gentili, which is, a boundary is for me and not against you.
Wow. Do you know what? So, for example, I'm gonna make a note of these because I'm intending on doing merchandise. I'm looking for a cartoonist to do a few bits and bobs, and I want to have those with the quote of who said it or what episode, and of like things that I thought is either entertaining or informational, or
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
useful. And I think those would be great because that could be something to even have at the front of a t-shirt or a mug, like as a
Yeah, yeah,
reminder, especially at work, right?
yeah. I mean, like like, there's a line of these T-shirts. It's like hashtag Ask Me, and I have
Oh.
a, I have a friend who she wants the Ask Me before you touch me. Um,
Yeah, I like
I
that.
ended
I
up
like
getting
that.
the one that's hashtag Ask Me for a hug. But it's just like
Yeah.
if you realize, if people realize that everybody has their own boundaries, and there's so many different factors that go into, it's your upbringing, how you were raised in your family. It can be around religion, it can be around gender, it can be around, um, like, if you're in a work situation, like, it's different for me to hug somebody in a professional situation than it is in a social situation. It could be about your relationship status, like, oh, if I hug this person, my partner is going to get jealous, so I can't do it. I mean, there's just so many different factors. It could be, around, physical ability. Like, there's some people who, like, I have a friend, for instance, she's super sensitive. She said when she was a kid, she had to wear her shirts inside out because the seams would bother her, and it's like, so there are people
Yeah.
for whom, touch can
Yeah.
be physically painful. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you go to rub somebody's shoulders when they have a sunburn. Mm-mm, that's just not going to be good.
Yeah. No, I can understand that. Can you explain? Because I know we just sort of touched on it, but I would like to have, like, could you give like some example of what's the difference between, when it comes to touch, and what's the difference between giving permission versus consent, and like how can we phrase this? How can we, express that in words in situations when we need to?
Yeah. I just want to say first off that this is not my original concept. It comes from Betty Martin, who is a touch facilitator and educator out of Seattle. She actually just put out a book called The Wheel of Consent, which is her work is excellent. But she draws a distinction between permission and consent. So permission would be, can I hug you? So that's really about, hey, I want to hug you. I don't really care about whether you want to hug or not. This is what I want and I'm going for it. Whereas consent is, would you like a hug? So you're asking the other person to say, you're giving them an opportunity to say yes or no. And it's always better to err on the side of consent than permission. And it doesn't, it takes a little bit of practice.
What do you mean by that? Better to err on the side of consent than permission?
I mean, if you're asking people for permission, you're not really giving them a lot of autonomy. But whereas okay, so if I come up to you and I'm going to ask you for a hug, obviously I want a hug because I'm asking for it. But if I'm saying, can I hug you? That's about what I want. Would you like a hug is about what they want. So it's giving them a space to say yes or say no.
Right. So actually it's I hear that because actually if I said to you, can I hug you? And you say no, it's like a rejection. Whereas if I say,
it's more of a rejection.
Right. And then if I said, would you like a hug? It's like saying, what do you want? And then you can say yes or no. Then it's just me saying. Then it's kind of like it has this facade of it's me wanting to cater to your need and desire. Like, would you like a hug? Yes or no? Doesn't matter because I'm asking. It's like me asking, do you want a cup of tea?
Right. There's actually.
What if I said, can I have a cup of tea? Would be like, no. That's weird, right?
Well, no. There's actually, it's funny that you mentioned that. There's a really famous cartoon video about tea and consent, and it's about, would you like a cup of tea? You wouldn't serve tea to somebody who didn't want tea, right?
Right.
If you look up tea and consent, you'll find it. It came out a few years ago, and it's
I love this because it kind of suddenly made sense. Metaphor. Yeah, because it suddenly made sense to me when I said, well, can I have a cup of tea? And if you said no, it'd be weird. I mean, in the UK, it'd be weird because tea is part of the love language here. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's very comforting.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go on a total tangent with you. Do you know?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
This music style chap hop, where it's like guys who are rapping about tea.
No, I don't know. Oh my God,
it's so good. What's the one guy's name? Professor Elemental. He's got like all these videos about tea.
Oh, I have to have a look at that.
You'll love it. But yes, tea is a love language. My father was Indian, so there was a lot of tea in my house. Yeah. It was all the time.
Well, I think the Brits stole it from the Indian culture actually originally. That's why they've been stole it or inherited, whatever you want to call it. But you know what I'm saying? It comes from India basically. That's the idea. Yeah. No, I don't know him. I know Professor Green. I mean, not personally, but just he's a famous singer here. Yeah.
But yeah, so exactly. It's it's around. This is so one of the things to kind of get back to sex and touch a little bit. One of the things that the romantic myth tells us is that when you're in a relationship with your soulmate, they're gonna know exactly how to touch you and where to touch you and all this stuff. So it's around creating more dialogue around it, which people think is very unromantic and unsexy, but it also.
Well, I tell you what's unromantic and unsexy is not feeling comfortable about how they touch you. And them not listening to you, and them not applying when you're telling them how to touch you.
But we make this assumption that that we can't speak up about it. So opening up these like dialogues, these little like micro interactions. There's billions of them around the world every day. It allows us a chance to change the culture around touch.
Can I ask you a question now?
Yes.
So let's say someone's like, with a friend, a colleague, or whatever, and that person, say, oh, can I have a hug or can I hug you? And you don't want to. And obviously they haven't listened to this or to you and know the difference on how to ask for a hug. What would be the best way to say no to them in a way that's not aggressive or confrontational?
Well, I don't think it's a one size fits all answer. And part of what you're talking about, I mean, when you're talking about with a colleague, there's a lot of situations around touch where people feel like they can't say no because there's a power differential. Like if your boss is like, "Oh, I want to give you a hug," you might be like, I don't know about that. I don't feel comfortable with that, but I can't say no to you because I might
That will be a
be
no
weird."
from me. Thank you.
I mean, you can just say
Yeah.
no, thank you.
Yeah.
You could. I mean, now you can.
Yeah.
Hey, it's COVID, and I'm still not touching people.
Yeah.
I still don't feel comfortable. But no is a complete sentence. You
True.
can add thank you at the end if you want. You could say, I only hug people that I'm very close to, or I only hug my family members, or I'm just not comfortable with it. And I think a lot of times it comes across well if you're confident about your boundaries, if you're not second guessing yourself and going, oh, maybe I shouldn't say that. If you're like, nope. And sometimes the other person will get angry, and that's their problem.
Yeah.
But you don't really need to have an explanation. You can just say
No.
no, thank you. A lot of times I think when you do explain, when you say no, because then it gives people a chance to try and
To counter
ask you
argue
more
you.
questions and
Yeah.
argue
Yeah.
with you and wear
Yeah.
you down or change your mind, or, well, have you thought about this? Or so if you just and you don't owe people an explanation. No, thank you.
This is so
I
because
prefer not to.
yeah, there'll be no, yeah. It's like I was just thinking about Phoebe in Friends. The kind of answer she'd give. I used to love that stuff when she'd say, "I wish I could, but I don't want to."
Yeah.
It's like, which I know you can't really say this, which I mean, but it kind of is what we mean. It's like, I wish I could give you that, but I really don't want to, so I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
But
I
it's
mean,
obviously people shouldn't be doing, just coming at you and asking for touch if it's not something that you have a history in doing or that you haven't set up a
right.
thing. But I wonder sometimes, and also, sometimes you meet people. It could be a date. I'm thinking of a date, and there's a good rapport and there's a good vibe. And when you talk, or when you walk, let's say you go for a walk after dinner, and accidentally, like, it's unconscious, but like your arms sometimes touch theirs and they touch yours, But it's like this natural. It's funny how in certain settings, a first meet can actually allow to just do that, and then maybe on a goodbye give a hug, and it feels completely fine. Whereas in another setting, which is why I guess, like you said about how to say no and I guess how to say yes, there is no cookie cutter answer. It really is about being, I guess, is knowing, also almost like having this container for ourselves of what we allow, what we would not allow.
Exactly.
And if something
That's a great way to put it.
and it's like, if we don't feel comfortable, to be fine by saying it, to just say it, or to, if you don't know how to say it, to excuse yourself and remove yourself from the situation, right? If you don't have the words, like you said, you don't need explanations, and some people will not listen to explanation because you may be wavering in that moment, right? So don't give them the chance to hook onto your wavering.
Right,
Just
exactly.
let them go.
Actually, another thing that I thought of when you were talking about that is something I've seen people do a lot is when somebody goes in for a hug, they stick their hand out for a handshake.
Oh, to stop that person. Do you know what do you know what I do? I put my hand on their shoulder. How do you call it? Is that, you have the shoulder, and if you put your own hand in front of your shoulder but slightly down, so it's a little bit on your chest,
like on the clavicle.
On the clavicle, and just go for a cheek kiss. Go, oh, it's lovely seeing you, lovely meeting you.
You could bow to them.
Oh,
Or you could stick up both your hands and just say no. I mean, there you can try a combination of body language and words. I mean, I think it's a good thing for people to, like, if this is something that is problematic for people, it's like, I think for a lot of people, it's like there some people who want more touch, and it's like they need to learn to ask for it. And then there are other people who who want less touch, and so they have to learn to say no.
Yeah.
Maybe practice and have kind of a stock thing. Like do some role playing with a friend. Where it's like, where the friend, where you say no and the other person says okay, and then you say no and the other person's like, well, why not? And you just keep saying no,
Yeah, yeah, practicing
so that
that.
you have like your kind of stock response or answer, especially, and you can be, and it might be, no, I'm sorry, touch is something that's very personal for me. I'm very picky about who I share it with, or whatever it is that you want. You can tell people why. No, I don't want to be touched because when I was from the time I was 3 years old, my father used to beat the shit out of me. Yeah,
Yeah, you don't. That's again, it's like it's the part of like not explaining. And there's also this other
right.
thing
But
where people are not owed our pain, right? And so I think this is where the being strong and not explaining, and I think sometimes I was trying to think, because sometimes it is. I mean, I'm very good at saying no and putting boundaries up when it comes to sex and safety. I don't have it as much in terms of like relationship, asking for what I want and need. I'm working on that, but when things like that, safety, I'm like really strong. And I was thinking there are times actually where even I can feel a bit uncomfortable, and I was thinking,
yeah,
what is a good phrase? And sometimes it's like, it's too early for me, I'm not in the mood.
again, it's really about, I think, people figuring out what works best for them, and having something that's kind of at the ready. If you know that you're a person doesn't like to be touched, and you find that people try to do it a lot, I mean, like, I tend to run around with a lot of alternative communities, and everybody hugs everybody there.
Yeah.
And I have some friends who are like not into it, and they're just like, nope, 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 and they struggle with it. And so
Yeah, it can feel like a struggle if you believe the message that your heart chakra it needs repairing.
yeah, that's such garbage. It's like,
It is such
okay,
garbage.
I've like opened my heart chakra, and I still don't want to hug anybody.
Yeah, and I think that's part of brainwashing. I mean, that school turned out to have a few twists and turns within. So
I mean,
I just didn't buy it. I wasn't there to buy it. I bought what was useful, and that's it. But
I mean, I understand, it's like people are attracted to alternative communities because, because they want that sense of belonging and connection.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
there's a lot of, there's a lot of abuse around it, just like I was saying, I have friends who are just like, they don't like to be touched. They don't like to be hugged. And, they go into these social situations, and they're just like, get me away from these people. It's not fun for them.
It's not, but I guess to round up on that, I guess like the power of a hug is that to me it's like it can be so sacred, because a good hug will literally make me want to cry, because it feels like returning home almost. Is this?
Yeah.
It can really, like, I can still remember this one hug, and it was this one. It's sort of had like a bit of a romantic thing going on, and I honestly had to. It's happened to me a couple of times actually, where I had to hide my tears rolling down, like silent tears, because I was like, they're gonna think I'm crazy. But it can really have the effect if someone gives you a hug that is so profound and the energy is right, and you both there to receive it and give it. It's like it's really, really moving. And so I think certain things is sacred to me, and I don't need to be giving that to the whole arena. It's the selected few that I feel I'm feeling a connection, and yeah.
I think that's, that's half the battle, is knowing where your boundaries are and knowing what's acceptable and what isn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's so powerful.
Yeah, and good for those who can give it to everyone. Again, like, this is not like it's just, I guess like we're both talking from our own experience. But you have people like, and I know you mentioned her in your book, is Amma. who gives hugs to, hundreds of people in
I
a
don't
session,
think.
right? So and that's not cheap. That's very profound. So I don't mean it to be, it's just like everyone has a different constitution. She knows how to handle all these people. I don't know how she
Yeah,
does it.
she's she's channeling some sort of deity or something. I mean, I don't. I've actually, like, one of my many ideas about, how to disperse touch more. I've thought about starting a church and doing something like that, but boy, I don't know if I could do it.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean, it's quite amazing that she can do it. I mean, I'm just, I think
It is. It's really amazing.
some people are built for it, and that's why I can understand why some people, they can just go out and they need to hug, like that guy in the office. He needed to hug everybody every morning,
Yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that it's like everyone has different in taste. It's like some people are into
Exactly.
certain kinks, some people are not, and there's nothing
Right.
wrong with it, right? So,
Yeah.
it's,
Well,
yeah, go on. Sorry.
I was just going to say this idea. I think if people are listening to this podcast and there's just one takeaway that they can get from it, is just to realize that everybody has a different level of comfort around touch, and especially right now after the pandemic is winding down, and that you need to realize that, and find the people who are saying yes instead of saying no, because I mean, I can't imagine, like, trying to give somebody a long hug when they don't want it. Oh my God, that sounds terrible,
Yeah.
But
No, absolutely.
so yeah, but it's like it's different for every person, and it's better to ask and get consent, and be hugging somebody that wants a hug from you.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I just saw a post today on LinkedIn and I thought it was a great idea. It's basically, it's a post from a guy called James Osborne. I don't know him. I'm not connected with him on LinkedIn, but he came up on my feed and it said, is an idea for those returning to their offices post-pandemic to manage people's different anxieties around, personal interaction. And so there's a picture with 3 baskets, each containing wristbands.
Yep.
And so one basket is red. It says, "Hi, I'm keeping my distance." The second one is yellow. "Okay, we're talking, but not touching." And then the third one, it says, "Okay, with hugs and high fives," which is green. And I was like, perfect. We
Yeah.
need to do that with with hugs and touching.
Yeah, we need to do that when we go out. Actually, some of my friends in California have an annual camp out, and they're doing one in August, and somebody's bringing, I don't know if they're doing bracelets or name tags or something, but it's like, where you can list your preference for, hey, I'm still keeping my distance from people, or yeah. Exactly.
And I love it because it feels inclusive to those of us who are not afraid of COVID and to those of us who are afraid of COVID, right? So it kind of makes it okay for everyone to have their own take on it and feel on it, right? So I love that.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a question in terms of like a solution for, us who are solo. Some people say single. I'll call it solo. And if we are shy to ask a friend for a hug, and if we cannot afford to pay for a massage, what do you suggest we do? Are there any like solutions around that we can do for ourselves as a self-care for hugs?
Yes. I actually, during the pandemic, I wrote an article. I think it's on spirituality and health website, that's about like ways to do self-touch, which obviously isn't the same thing, but it can be helpful. One of the things that I find is really useful is like to take a blanket and like pull it really tightly around myself, that it makes me, that it mimics that feeling of a hug. I mean, how popular the weighted blankets have gotten. It's like that. Another like fairly low cost option for people is cuddle parties, where you get together with a group of strangers and it's facilitated, and the first hour or so is kind of a workshop on consent and boundaries, and then the next couple hours are just people sharing touch, sharing platonic touch, and that, so those are fairly inexpensive. They're usually, most places, I think they're around $20. Because like you said, there's a lot of people who are too shy to ask their friends. Going to see a professional cuddler is probably is a pretty similar price to getting a massage. So not necessarily. You could go and get a pedicure.
Oh yeah, with the foot massage
Yeah,
included.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It just, you could go like the next time you get your hair cut, ask your hairdresser to like, do a really
Yes.
long, luxurious wash, hair washing.
With the with the scalp massage.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
but you want them to really, you can tell the difference between those who are into it and not. Now, even when you go for a massage, there's nothing worse than them not being into it or talking to their colleague. Same with the hair
Yeah,
massage. It's like, don't know. And don't talk to me either. Don't ask me questions. I'm like, I want it to be silence. I need to be receiving right now. I am paying you so that I can just
yeah,
receive this because I really, and then we can chat afterwards, you know?
yeah.
I'm all for chatting after and before, but during, nah,
Hmm.
nah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the biggest thing with this is for, regardless of, where you're at, what your barriers are, is that you're not going to be able to get more touch without getting out of your comfort zone in some way. You're going to have to take a risk, whether that's, opening up and, asking people. I mean, one thing you could do, it's a little bit more fun to do it with a bunch of people. You could go stand on a street corner with a sign that says free hugs, and
So
maybe
yeah, so,
people won't take you up on it, but
yeah,
there's probably somebody who's going to walk by who's like,
true.
wow, I could really use a hug right now.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's different ways you could, think about, what is it? It's like blues dancing or contact improv. There's a couple of different social dance gatherings that happen where, people touch each other a lot.
Oh, actually, going to salsa, that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
taking dance classes is a really good thing.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but it's gonna take trying something different or doing something different and taking a risk. If people feel like they're too shy to ask people one on one, the thing that I did with the book is I set it up. The spoiler, the book teaches you how to share touch with your friends, with people that you already know. And the idea behind it is, anytime that we touch people one on one, it's like we think about that as something that's romantic or sexual. So when you do it in a group of like 4 people, then it becomes a social experience instead of a sexual experience. And it's funny and it's goofy, and everybody's like nervous and weird and awkward, and I mean, even just like a single exercise of where one person is touching the other person's hand is like totally profound and relaxing, and people are like, wow, I didn't want that to end. Even when you're just doing it for a minute or two, I mean, you can just get so much information from that. um
No, I love that. Can I give you some of? I had like 3 ideas I put down about the solution if we're solo and we don't want to ask
yeah,
friends,
absolutely.
or we can afford to pay for a massage, or go to the hairdressers and get that massage. First one is I've been considering this for years actually. I wanted to buy one of those body support pregnancy pillow. You know, the one that's U shape.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
It looks really fun, and it's like one of those that actually envelops your whole body. And I wonder if that's quite comforting at night. I've never tried it, but I'm up to trying it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely snuggle up with I have a body pillow that I sleep with.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, because I have
And
tons of
actually,
pillows too.
and a weighted blanket as well. My theory on why the weighted blanket works is because, when human beings were first coming around as a species thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, we used to sleep in big piles in a cave for warmth and safety, So it's like we were used to, or, even that thing of like sleeping with your family when it was cold, where, that's, having our body pressed up against a lot of other bodies is,
I guess it's the pressure, it's that touch against
it
our
is the
nervous
pressure. And
system.
and it's like, and you learn that when you're an infant, it's like when your mother holds you,
Absolutely.
it feels good.
Well, listen, one of my friends,
Yeah.
a child, when he was a baby, she was like, if you hold him, he won't cry. That was the best way to, and I held him.
Yeah.
It was so comforting to hold him as well. Is that the energy that comes out of
Yeah.
babies is intense, is amazing. But you can tell it's like but it's really easy to see why, because you are wrapping them. Their nervous system is completely wrapped up, we're just holding them. It's so comforting
Right.
for them, like in
It
the
is.
belly. And then number two would be like, if you go to a gym and there's power plates, there's an exercise that you can, it's not an exercise, it's like at the end when you relax or stretch on them, this thing where you can take the mat that's on the power plate. It's like a almost like a big smile shape or like a U shape. What you do is that you sit in front of the power plate, and then you take that mat and you wrap it around your back, and you make sure that you wrap it. You don't just have it behind you. You wrap it around by holding with your hands, like crossing in front of your body, and you turn it on, and it vibrates all over your back. It helps relax your back. And I
Oh
think
my God, that sounds amazing.
yeah, and I think that will, also help, just to activate that nervous system in your spine,
Yeah.
to soothe it. Now, obviously, if you have back issues, don't do it. But yeah, if everything is kosher in your back, you can do that. And then the last one is, which obviously is a bit harder to do, but like a self hug.
Yeah. Yeah.
A self hug, yeah.
It's not.
And you
I
can
mean, it's
and you can move side to side when you give yourself a little self hug. Yeah.
Yeah, totally, totally. Those are all fantastic ideas. Oh, something else that when you were talking about holding your friend's baby, there are actually hospitals all over the world that have programs where people go in and they hold premature babies. They've found that
Oh,
it helps them to their organs develop faster, their immune
yeah.
systems develop faster, they gain weight, they get out of the hospitals faster. So
Absolutely.
there are programs of volunteers who will go to the hospital and cuddle premature babies. So that could be a
Oh,
really reward. I mean, it's
absolutely.
not, the touch is more one way. You're giving touch instead of receiving it, but I still think it could be
Oh,
really
it's I think when you
nurturing.
it's almost like it's a very different, it's a different paradigm when you actually hold a baby, because actually the energy transfers happen, but it's like you're giving them because they need to you're giving them a hug, you hold them because
Yeah.
they need to, they can't, you can't just leave them on the floor, right? You have to hold them.
Right,
And but
totally.
actually it's one of those that you give but you receive more in return. Almost, it's like the feeling that comes out of the energy that comes out of a baby is so pure, it's really moving, and it's really healing just to hold them.
Yeah,
um
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
and
Agreed,
that's
agreed.
how they relax. When I had a baby once, Pooh, whilst I was holding him, was he
Ah,
had nappies, and then the mom said, "Oh, that's because he's so relaxed with you." And I was like, "Oh, okay,
oh,
what?"
well,
I was
that's so
like, "Well,
sweet.
that's one way to that's one way to to like to say it." But I guess I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take that as a compliment, because if it was an adult, it'd be very different, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally.
So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move on to the finishing thoughts, which are two questions that I ask every one of my guests. And the first one is, what do you wish you'd realized or understood at 18?
Wow, that's a great question. I think that it's okay to be different, and when you accept your own weirdness, it gives other people permission to accept their own, and that it
Yeah.
can be something that's a bridge and not a wall.
I love that. I love that. And the second one is, what stuff do you not put up with anymore?
Mm, probably mostly around, I'd say these days it's around people who have or have ambiguous boundaries, where they're just a little bit too far one way or another. I like really clear, direct communication, and people being fuzzy doesn't really do it for me.
So, Epiphany, this has been so lovely speaking with you about this. I've really enjoyed that
Yeah,
chat.
thank
Thank
you
you
for having
so
me
much.
on.
And please tell us all where we can find you. Where can people buy your book? Can they work with you? Like, give us all the good stuff.
Sure. So, the best way to get a hold of me or find me is my website, which is www.nurturinghumantouch.com. And there's links there for all kinds of articles, podcasts, resources. You can buy the book off of there. You can buy the book pretty much on any of the major e-retailers. It's out in paperback, uh, ebook, and audiobook format, which also comes with like a little download so that you can have all the exercises and things in there. And oh, let's see, I'm on Instagram under somebody_hold_me, which is fun. I often write little things that I'm thinking about touch, or, experiences that I have or what have you. I'm actually getting ready to go back to school, and I'm going to be moving out of Austin, and I'm hoping to reopen Karuna sessions at some point, but yeah, or be able to travel and do it, or I'm not sure yet. Not sure what's happening with my hands-on work, but I'd love to get back to it now that we're more comfortable with being physically close to each other and in the same space. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
We need to get back to normal. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for today, Epiphany, and all the best with your studies. And thank you so much for being game with me today.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And that's our episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to rate, review, share it, subscribe it on iTunes, follow it on Spotify, or whichever platform you listen from. However you show love is how you can support this show. Drop me your questions or suggestions for future episodes via the website at angie-s.com, or come and find me on Instagram at @toolfordishitpodcast. See you next week, and until then,
using health inappropriately.